Welcome to Fuse Room, I'm Alberto. I'm gonna be your host today for talking about PSP Impressor. So the question is, why another compressor? And this is not gonna have an answer today nor ever, but Impressor is awesome at doing impressions of compressors, and I mean this in the most positive of ways. It's not gonna replace your favorite FET compressor, VCA tube, you name it, but it takes dynamic management to a more absolute term, and this is fantastic for sound design, preparing tracks, buses, material, you name it. It works with other compressors, without, even before and after reverbs, and I've had a blast using this. We're gonna take a look at the interface and then we're gonna see an example of what it can do. The interface is really simple and self-explanatory, very clear. So on top there's presets, save, copy, paste, A, B, awesome presets made by fantastic people, by the way, and the huge meters, which show pre, post, GR, and also can act as a double compare meter to see where input and outputs were before and after compression. Then there's a huge compress knob for quantity, attack and release with times 10. There's a feedback and feed forward variable behavior that you can tune. And there's a fantastic hold, which is awesome for further shaping the envelopes. Look ahead, RMS behavior or peak. There's a frequency and Q and variable bell type or tilt or high pass. Sidechain filter internally that you can use. There's auto compensation for makeup gain. And the most important probably being the shape knob in the middle bottom part. So you got none if you only want to use limiting and saturation from the bottom part. Then there's soft, wide, medium, short, sharp, and hard. These are all different stereotypes that Impressor uses to impress you and also to make impressions of compressors. And they sound very dramatic when you engage compression a lot, but they also act as a sort of a theater in which you want to reshape the envelopes. So to me, once you learn these colors, you're gonna dial that probably first and then work your way with the envelope knobs. At the bottom, as usual, with the PSP plugins, we got a process and bypass, input and output that can be chained, mix knob, very useful, and then you can engage saturation, just like a soft clipping or limiting whatsoever. Then you can open the unit and you see, the traces and the little resistors, which are fantastic. You can link the stereo field, and you can also set the auto strength for the auto makeup gain. This is great because there's no one setting that will allow the auto makeup to be perfectly on spot, for your listening comparisons. Because of the envelopes, of the compression types, compressors are very hard to auto gain in feeling, right? In the sort of a felt loudness term. And then last but not least, we got a FET, F-A-T, which is an oversampler that lowers aliasing and also allows us to get a better detection, especially for high frequency and stuff. So it's recommended to use whenever you're working on, important material like mixing, mix buses, mastering, or you're doing quite a lot of compression. Then at the very bottom of the interface, we got a sidechain input, which can be set to external, variable between the two. And then you can monitor with a very clear side picture that this is monitoring the sidechain input, which is, just to avoid that I forget that this is on, which has happened in the past. And this really fine-tunes the sidechain frequency that internally or externally you're using to trigger this compressor. But ultimately, how does Impressor sound? Here we have a draft for a video game soundtrack, because that's what I do, that I've written to pitch to a company for a project. There's no NDA yet, so probably this is no prison time for me. So let's take a listen to the main part of these, and then we'll comment and take a look at the various tracks. Right, so this draft is in the science fiction, cyberpunk, post-apocalyptic, post-rock, breakbeats, you name it, techno, world music, I don't even know. But that's kind of the style of music I write, and I've been writing for quite a while. But this project has a specific sort of request from the company that was that a lot of stuff had to sound kind of old school and a little bit claustrophobic. And I remember saying like, it has to sound like it's always in a metal tank somehow. Or in a very thick atmosphere of a futuristic bar or whatever, right? So let's take a look at the various tracks. I want to start from the kits. So this kit has Impressor twice, for example. So initially it would sound like this. And with the first Impressor, it sounds like this. Not doing much, right? Just handling the balance and sort of compressing it. With the second one, it sounds like this. And now you're like, oh, I can use this, right? I would say that. So let's try it without and with. Massive difference. And the vibe is just perfect for it. And you know, when you're composing, you're always trying to find that sound in your head that just gets translated to the DAW. And with the plugins, obviously, it's a huge deal. Some things to get used to, others are new. This one was like, that's it. I'm gonna use that. Kit number 2 is another fantastic example. It has a basic kit, like the cheapest drum kit you could ever get, blown to pieces by Impressor, going into a 2445, which is a plugin made by PSP again, and it's an awesome, awesome reverb. And this nails down the tone and vibe of this metally, cheap, old school cyberpunk kind of vibe. So let's hear it without PSP, Impressor, and then with the 2445. Right? What else do you want to say? This is just great. The air behind the kit through the 2445 is just insane. The additional drum tracks have Impressor, but they don't change that much. Let's listen to all 4 of them. It's hats, claps, hat 1 and 2, without Impressor, and then with. So there's a sort of a contingency to it. I don't know if that's the right term, but it just sounds awesome. Now, all of these drums are sent to a special bus that I've designed for this song and for the other songs in this project. So I really hope that this gets chosen because it's just awesome. It has saturator, it has Impressor, and then it has a 2445. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you listen to the drum kit in its entirety, without these bus, and then with. So let's start with the bass at minus infinite, and then I'm gonna bring it up. Hear what it does. And there's quite a long tail for the hats, of course. It just sounds overwhelmingly cool. It has that bounce back sort of slap delay that is not classic, but it's more futuristic somehow, post-apocalyptic. I call it a dystopian slap, which makes no sense at all, obviously. All right, now the synth tracks. Now there's a couple ARPs that have Impressor, so let's take a listen to them. This is just an amplifier, a guitar amp sim into Impressor, so without and with. Here, I think it's the mix with the short shape, with the attack at ×10. in look ahead, RMS. It's just raising the density of this synth, which is the main atmospheric element in which the drum kit kind of sits. So the other synth is kind of similar, and it also has Impressor. So let's take a look at this as well, without and with. As you notice, the parameters are pretty much the same as the ones we had before in the other synth ARP, but as a composer, I just cannot stress enough how much time we spend on the synthesizers, in my case, to fine-tune the patches. In this case, I think this compressor is perfect for just bringing the translation of the synth up to a better point, but it doesn't really affect the behavior. Actually, if anything, it makes it even more dramatic somehow. Point made. Let's go to the third synth. This is a pulse bass. The pulse bass has a PSP Impressor going into a 2445 again. So this would be the bass without the Impressor, and then with. And again, not much of a difference, right? So we have two extremes sometimes. Gentle dynamic control to bring it, up front in the mix or make it a little bit more dense. And on the kits, we've seen dramatic, changes. So both things are done really, really well. And this would be without the reverb and then with. Not much of a difference, right? Well, this is just the halo that I like to have on these sort of instruments because they're very pointy, and sometimes at low level, when people are listening to music in video games at a very low volume, these elements tend to stand out a bit too much, especially in headphones. So the 2445 also works as a great utility. And this concludes the examples. There's not many tracks, but we've seen Impressor do gentle leveler approach to exploding things approach. And it always sounds great. It never sounds like it's totally imitating some clone unit. And it's always bringing something to the table. I've really loved this approach. I'm gonna probably remodel stuff around to use Impressor more now that it's out. And I hope this is inspiring for your music, whether you're doing jazz or rock or electronic soundtracks or cyberpunk stuff as I'm doing. Thank you very much for watching. Have fun with Impressor. Ciao.